Hello everyone, welcome to the episode D of Debugging TV Frames program. You can type your questions during this episode. If I can't answer particular questions now, I then post answers on the website debugging.tv. I quickly discuss some topics such as on this list. First, I show you Xcode project source code for a spiking thread pattern. Then I manually dump a spiking process, look at its code dump, and then we attach a debugger live to another spiking process and look inside. Here's the source code of the application where one thread loops doing some math. You see it, thread number 3, thread underscore 3. So there is a while loop that does repeatedly square root of an argument. So when we launch this application, on activity monitor, we see spiking thread up, spikes CPU, something like 100% or a bit less or a bit more. So let's launch such application. So I launch it, and to make it background, I append an ampersand. So you see the process ID is 8125. So if we look at activity, we see it's spiking. And what we can do, we can send it quit signal, and this will generate code dump. If we look at processes, so it's running. Yeah, you see that line code dumped. So then we look at cause. We see that the one was saved. Let's open it in WinDBG. So we see I did a lot of trying. So that's not this one. Yeah, so spiking thread. I'm trying to find. Okay, so let's open that course. core dot 8125. So we see that we launch GDB supply image file and then supply core. So if we do info threads, we see there are 4 threads. 3 of them are waiting, and the 4th one is some kind of in square root function. So if we do switch to the thread 4, and do VT, we get stack trace, and we can disassemble function and see this function. So we see that actually this is square root function, so we need to disassemble thread 3 function. So we see that there is call, then jump to this address, and then all repeats. So this tight loop. However, if we would like to see thread info, particular thread info, for example, info thread 4, so we see that debugger cannot get this information because it needs to communicate with running process. So what we do, we quit, and then we relaunch our application again. So you see there is another process ID, another spiking thread application. So what we do, we now attach GDB to that process. So we again run GDB supply image of spiking thread, and then supply also process ID. This is now 8162. And now info threads, we get the same picture, but now if we would like to see information about particular thread, we can do that. For example, info thread 1 gives us this total user time spent and total system time spent. So these are times spent in user and kernel modes. And we can compare, for example, with the spike in thread 4. So we see much bigger times. If we compare. So if we run it for some time, we get bigger numbers. And so this is a picture. So you see, I was running that spiking thread for some time. You see that total user time is many times bigger than for sleeping thread. So, however, if we see that from live debugging, but from code dump, we see we can diagnose spiking thread by just looking if it is sleeping or not. So most threads are sleeping or waiting. And also we can see that in crash report. So that one is crash report. For example, for our case, that was the last one. we see that all other threads are waiting and only our spiking thread has non-waiting function. So this is all that I wanted to show you for this spiking thread pattern and how to attach and generate code dump. So this one that kills sends a quit signal, it kills process, but there is a good article I found that from famous OS/6 internals book that provides some source code for an application that can dump and also it can dump but doesn't kill process. And at the end, here we come to some ads. You can see that new accelerated and advanced training sessions are scheduled for July. That's what you see. Accelerated and advanced Windows memory dump analysis is for Windows. And .NET session starts next week. Also, please note the new malware training comes in July. And we have other trainings scheduled for October, like accelerated Windows trace analysis and macOS/6 code dump analysis. And so, thank you for watching this episode. Please later check out the slides and recorded video from debugging.tv. The next episode is scheduled for 18th of May due to .NET training course next week. I would try to make it iOS related because I today got new iPad, very good for reading books. So if you have questions, you can ask now. Otherwise, see you all on 18th of May. So I try to come up with some debugging scenario for iPad. So thank you very much for attending again. And if you don't have questions, then bye-bye. I leave this window for another 15-30 minutes, so you can type your questions if you have them. So thank you again for attending. See you in 2 weeks.